Welcome, I am Ruth Martinez Lopez, Chair of the Thematic Working Group 1. Our mission is to close the implementation gap between the distance in high-level policy and what actually happens in the classroom to support girls in ICT education. To help us bridge this gap, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Irina Dimitrova, our policy and governance leader. Irina views confidence not as a prerequisite for technology, but as a result of supportive learning environments. Today, she will present the Classroom Evidence Lab, a simple tool for schools to track girls' participation, and I'm personally excited to see how this can be integrated between existing tools like the teacher selfie. Irina, thank you very much for being here with us today. The floor is yours. I'm going to go to share the screen, and you can start whenever you want.
Thanks for presenting me, Ruth, and hello everyone, and thank you for being here in this webinar. I am very happy to present in front of all of you today, and thank you for assisting me with the presentation, of course. Let's start with a simple observation from our work under the Thematic Working Group 1. As we all know very well, over the past decade, especially, Europe has invested enormous effort in shaping policies for digital education and for gender equality in technology. We have so many strategies, frameworks, declarations, and some indicators to monitor. But in our working group, Thematic Working Group 1, ICT in Education, we all kept coming back to one very simple question. What actually happens inside ICT classrooms with girls? Because in the reality, we have all of this policy that is written at European, at national level. The monitoring usually happens at system level, but actual learning happens somewhere else. It happens inside classrooms, in the daily interactions between teachers and students. And surprisingly, this is exactly the level where we often have the least evidence. So the instrument that I will present today, the Classroom Evidence Lab, was designed to address this very gap. It is intentionally simple, it is intentionally practical, and it is designed to generate some small pieces of evidence from classrooms that can inform both schools and policy discussions. Ruth, next slide, please. Before introducing the tool, it is important to recognize something clearly. Europe does not lack vision or ambition. Over the last years, a very strong policy ecosystem has been built around digital education and gender equality. For example, we have the Digital Education Action Plan that sets the strategic direction for digital transformation in education. We have Digicomp Edu that provides a comprehensive framework describing digital competences for educators at all levels, not only schools, but also in higher education. We have the Council recommendation on digital skills that encourage member states to strengthen the digital competences across education system. We have the Council recommendations on vocational education and training, and the newly adopted Herning Declaration, which emphasizes inclusion and diversity in VET system in general and also in the digital education. Of course, we have the Age Gender Equality Index, previous slide, please, that allows us to track progress in gender equality across Europe. So from a policy perspective, we are covered and the direction is clear. We know that increasing girls' participation and progression in ICT and STEM is essential for Europe's digital future. However, when our subgroup analyzes these frameworks, something like interesting pattern appeared, that most of these instruments are designed to monitor systems. They measure national progress, they analyze institutional capacity, and they define competence frameworks. But they rarely tell us what actually happens during ICT learning in classrooms. When our policy and governance subgroup started analyzing the existing European initiatives, we noticed something interesting, that the ecosystem around digital education is actually very well developed with strong strategies, competence frameworks, but everything is in general. So in many ways, Europe has done an impressive job at building a policy architecture for digital education. But when we looked more closely, especially in terms of gender inclusion, we realized that these instruments operate at system level. And we have evidence also from a research subgroup. So all of this tell us things like how many students study ICT, how many teachers receive digital training, and how countries perform in digital skills indicators. And don't get me wrong, all of this is extremely valuable, but these indicators do not necessarily tell us what happens during ICT lessons. So we miss information on who takes the technical roles in group work, who feels confident using digital tools, who starts disengaging from ICT activities. So this is equally important because many of the patterns that later influence ICT career choices and advancing in ICT careers actually begin inside classrooms. So we all realized that something was missing. Gender equality appears strong in strategies, but it rarely appears in standards or requirements for teachers training or quality assurance cycles. And we all know that when something is not embedded in the system routines, it becomes dependent on motivated individuals. Next slide, please. So this observation led us to what we started calling the policy to classroom gap. In education governance, we often think in layers. At the top, we have policy frameworks that define the strategic goals. For example, digital transformation or gender equality in ICT. Below that, we have education systems and institutions where policies are implemented through programs, curricula, and some national initiatives. But at the end of this chain, there's another level, the classroom. And this is where policies finally become reality, or sometimes where they stop. So the reality is that most policy and monitoring systems do not reach the classroom level. They tell us how systems perform, but they rarely capture how learning dynamics unfold during lessons. And this is exactly the level where many subtle things happen, like confidence, like participation, role distribution, and engagement. So our subgroup started asking the simple question, what if schools had some simple way to generate the classroom level evidence in terms of gender inclusion? And that question eventually led to the development of the Classroom Evidence Lab, because we believe that the real challenge is actually operational. It's not in the vision, it's in operational terms. Next slide, please. After identifying the policy to classroom gap, our subgroup asked some questions, and we've been part of discussions. So what kind of support do schools actually need if policies aim to increase girls' participation and confidence in ICT learning? So we kept hearing the same message, that schools are not necessarily asking for more strategies, but they're asking for some practical guidance, some practical tools. Teachers, after reading all those strategic frameworks and participation in trainings, they could say that, okay, we understand the goals, but what exactly should we observe or measure in our classrooms to reach those goals? And that's a very legitimate point. because most of the existing monitoring systems, and believe me, I've did my research in at EU level. So most of those monitoring systems and quality assurance in ICT and in vocational education and training, they are designed for ministries, for separate research projects, and for national statistics. But the teachers need practical tools that are simple, fast to use, and directly relevant to classroom practice. And equally important, and I want to emphasize this, they should not increase the administrative workload. Teachers already spent some enormous amounts of time on documentation and reporting. So if we wanted schools to generate classroom level evidence, the tool had to follow one simple rule. It must be light. So light enough to be used during everyday teaching and to generate useful insights quickly. All of this led to the creation of the Classroom Evidence Lab, which is not another framework, not another reporting requirement. This is just a small operational instrument that schools can actually use. It is ready to use. Next slide, please. So what exactly is the Classroom Evidence Lab? The simple way to describe it is that it is a very light protocol for generating classroom level evidence. It's not a research methodology. We're not getting smart here, and it does not require specialized training. Instead, this tool focuses on something that is very practical. We try to help schools observe a few key dynamics that influence students' engagement with ICT learning. So in particular, this tool focuses on three things, and I will repeat at least 10 times during our webinar. Those three things are participation, confidence, and progression in ICT learning pathways. So these three dimensions are extremely important when we talk about gender equality and inclusion in digital educations, because students, and especially girls, do not disengage from ICT suddenly from nothing. Often the process is gradual, and it begins with some small things like in the classroom, who volunteers to use the device, who takes the technical roles in group work, and who feels confident presenting digital solutions. And these dynamics often remain invisible unless teachers intentionally observe them. So that's why the Classroom Evidence Lab was designed to be simple, fast, and usable during normal lessons. And teachers do not need research training. They simply use a few small observation tools, templates, that help them notice patterns in the classroom practice. Most of those patterns are somehow noticed, but in a superficial way. They are just not recorded. So again, this is not a research project and proposal. It's a practical observation tool for schools. Next slide, please. Our Classroom Evidence Lab focuses on generating evidence, as I said, three key dimensions. So those dimensions were not chosen randomly. They all reflect patterns that research and policy discussions repeatedly highlight when analyzing gender gaps in the digital education. What about participation? So participation simply asks who takes part in ICT learning activities, who leads technical tasks, who steps back and lets others take control and take only the observant role. So these small patterns can tell us a lot about how students experience ICT learning. The second dimension is confidence, which is quite important for technology learning. Many students may have the ability to work with the technology, particularly girls. We have evidences from PISA that girls are doing way better in ICT than boys. but they might not feel equally confident using it like publicly or experimenting with it. So the Classroom Evidence Lab includes some simple ways to capture how students perceive their own confidence when working with digital tools. The third dimension is progression, which refers to how students gradually move towards more advanced engagement with ICT. For example, do students start choosing ICT-related tasks? Do they show interest in further ICT learning? And do they consider ICT pathways in the future, in the labor market after graduating? So when schools observe those three dimensions together, the participation, confidence, and progression, they start to see patterns that are otherwise very difficult to notice. So, to summarize, participation shows who is present, confidence shows who feels capable, and progression shows who continues the journey. Next slide, please. Our tool works through a very simple cycle of evidence collection and reflection. The idea was to design the process that schools could realistically apply within normal teaching practice without needing additional research project or external evaluations, God forbid. So the cycle consists of 5 simple steps. The first step is the student confidence survey, which is a very short questionnaire that helps teachers understand how students perceive their confidence when working with digital tools. It is brief, something that can be completed in just a few minutes. The second step is the role allocation tracker. So during collaborative ICT activities, group works, teachers can observe which role students take: who operates the device, who programs, who codes, who documents the work, who observes, who presents the results. So this observation leads to revealing some patterns that teachers usually do not initially notice. And they may choose to allocate those roles in the next group work, for example. The third step is a progression snapshot. This looks at how students engage with ICT learning over time. Do they increasingly choose technical tasks? Do they show interest in further ICT learning? And do they start imagining themselves in ICT-related roles? The fourth step is a teacher reflection. After observing the class, teachers briefly reflect on what they noticed. Because during the previous step, they briefly collect data. But the data alone does not create understanding. We need a reflection that creates understanding. And finally, the fifth step, all of this information can be summarized in one 2-page report. That report allowed schools to see some patterns across classes and over time. Crucial part of internal quality assurance system for schools. So this is the central idea of the Classroom Evidence Lab. Some simple evidence collected regularly and used immediately. Next slide, please. Now I will show you a part of one of the actual instruments from the Classroom Evidence Lab. You don't need to read all of these small letters. This is the first template, the Classroom Confidence Form. At first glance, it looks like a normal short survey, and it is exactly the same. It was exactly the intention of developing this. We wanted something very simple and familiar to teachers and students. Of course, it can be applied like a digital tool. So the form starts with a small section of administrative information that is completed by the teacher. Things like school or institution, class, group, subject, or module, the type of activity, for example, whether it is a coding session, group project, or some kind of hands-on task. This is this information is very important because it helps teachers later interpret the results in context. So students then receive a very short questionnaire with 5 statements. They simply indicate their level of agreement on a 5-point scale. The statements focus on 3 main aspects: the confidence using digital tools, the confidence solving ICT-related problems, and the feeling that their contributions are valued during digital learning activities. There's also an optional open-ended question when students can briefly mention something that makes digital learning easier or more difficult to them. Also, the survey is anonymous. No names are collected. The goal is not to evaluate individual students, but for teachers to calculate average scores at the class level, usually at the beginning and at the end of a term or a project. And of course, it's gender specific. This allows them to observe some changes in confidence over time. So, for example, did confidence increase after introducing more collaborative activities? Did certain types of tasks make students more willing to participate? So these kind of insights help teachers to adjust their classroom practices. And again, the goal is not to measure students' performance. The goal is to understand the learning environment. Next slide, please. Also, let me briefly show you the role allocation tracker. So the tool can be used by teachers during the collaborative ICT activities, group projects, tasks, coding, robotic sessions, whatever ICT-related practice in the classroom happens. The tracker records something very simple: who performs which role during the activity, who operates the device, who acts as a troubleshooter when something does not work, who explains the group solution to the class, who documents, who observes. Again, the tracker does not evaluate the student ability or competence or skill. It does not measure performance. It simply captures how roles are distributed during the activity. So this distinction is extremely important. The goal is not to judge students. The goal is, again, to understand participation dynamics. Teachers would usually complete the tracker during 2 or more activities during the term. So at the end of the period, they can summarize the results. How often did girls take technical roles, such as operator or coder? How often were they presenters or recorders? So these aggregated results can reveal patterns that might otherwise remain unnoticed. And this information is not used for grading, of course. Instead, it becomes the starting point for the teacher reflection. For example, are certain roles consistently taken by girls? Do some girls avoid technical roles? And could small changes in task design encourage more gender-balanced participation? For me, the role allocation tracking is the highest leverage step in this tool. So if girls are observers rather than operators, confidence gaps are predictable. And for me, experience could shape their identity. When we look at our Women in Digital Index, we see that participation in STEM and ICT education is improving. Very good numbers. You should all check those. At entry level, everything is okay. But when we move up the ladder towards leadership, decision making, and senior roles, we see some sharp drop in all EU countries, actually. So something might happen in between. Even when girls choose ICT as a career, many do not advance in leadership roles. And one possible explanation for that is the confidence architecture. So if from early classroom experience, girls are positioned more often as contributors rather than technical leads, over time, this becomes their identity. So leadership actually starts in group work. Next slide, please. Another element of the classroom evidence lab is the teacher reflection. The teacher reflection is a short form that teachers complete after observing classroom dynamics over a term or a project. The reflection could take 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the questionnaire, because every template could be adjusted according to the students, to the school's needs. Again, its purpose is not evaluation or reporting. Its purpose is a professional reflection. So basically, we need to teach teachers about the quality assurance cycle in education, and it needs a professional reflection. So teachers are invited to reflect on a few simple questions. Did you notice changes in students' confidence or participation during ICT activities? Were roles distributed evenly among students, or did certain patterns appear? Were there some specific teaching choices, such as role rotation, group composition, or task design that helped improve participation? So here we put some hints on how they can play with the tool. And finally, teachers are asked something like a forward-looking question. What is one concrete change you would try next term to make ICT learning more inclusive? So this reflection step is, again, quite important. And I should repeat here that the data alone does not automatically improve the teaching towards gender inclusion. Numbers, observations only become useful when teachers interpret them in the context of their own classroom practice. So as you see, the Classroom Evidence Lab combines some different types of insight. On one side, those are small pieces of classroom evidence, and on the other side, equally important, the professional reflection. Together, they create a feedback loop with those 5 steps protocol that helps teachers adjust their practice over time towards gender inclusion. And again, data without reflection is a statistics. From my economic background, but reflection can turn data into learning and into improvement. So in many cases, teachers already sense those dynamics, but as an intuition, while the reflection form simply helps make those insights explicit. Next slide, please. So what can schools actually do with this type of classroom evidence? What happens after the whole quality loop? The first and most immediate level is the classroom itself. So teachers can use the observation to reflect on their own teaching practice. They could choose to rotate roles more deliberately during group work. Certain tasks could be redesigned to encourage broader participation, and some small adjustments can often make a meaningful difference. The second level is the department or subject team. So teachers teaching ICT STEM or digital modules, whether in general education or in vet education, can discuss patterns they observe across different classes. This particularly helps create some shared awareness about participation dynamics and teaching strategies. The third level is the school leadership level. Those aggregated observations, this final 1-2 pages report, can help school leaders understand how inclusive their ICT learning environments are and to promote the school as a gender inclusive school. For example, are girls broadly engaging with digital learning, or are those girls less represented in technical roles? So this information, of course, can support decisions at school level about curriculum design, about teacher support, or continuous professional development for teachers, or about the learning environments in the school in general. And finally, there's the system level. When many schools let us dream about it. But when many schools generate small pieces of classroom evidence, this information can feed back into policy discussions because it provides something that large monitoring systems often lack. This is the insight into the real classroom dynamics. So we in our thematic working group believe that small pieces of classroom evidence can inform big education decisions and discussions. Next slide, please. So let me present you the three most important and short reflection on why this approach matters for policy discussions. First, this classroom evidence lab helps to operationalize gender equality in ICT education. Many policies already recognize the importance of increasing girls' participation in digital learning and technology careers, but policies alone cannot change classroom dynamics. Operational instruments help translate policy intentions into everyday teaching practice. Also, the tool generates what we might call microevidence. So the large national level monitoring systems provide macro level indicators, which are important, of course, no doubt about it. But some small pieces of evidence from classroom reveal something different. They shows us how participation, confidence, and engagement actually is shown during learning activities. And this insight can complement larger policy indicators in a qualitative layer. And also, the Classroom Evidence Lab helps connect policy frameworks with real education practice. So instead of creating additional reporting systems, it actually empowers schools to generate evidence that is meaningful for their own teaching. At the same time, these insights can inform broader discussions about inclusion in digital education. And let us dream once again at regional, national, and why not international level. So in a way, the Classroom Evidence Lab is not only a tool, but it is a practical example of how policy and practice can meet in a constructive way. So our thematic working group one message here is that policy becomes real only when it enters the classroom. And maybe the last slide. Perhaps the most important question for all of us working on digital inclusion is very simple. What happens inside the classroom tomorrow morning? So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. Ruth, myself, and the colleagues from the thematic working group one would be very interested to hear your perspectives, your ideas, reflections, and also any practical examples from your own contexts. We would be happy to open the discussion.
Thank you very much, Irina, for that clear look to the Classroom Evidence Lab. It's encouraging to see a tool that is designed to be so practical and not a low burden for the educators. So we now have time for questions. If the participants are interested, please raise your hand or write your questions in the chat.
Of course, this was only a sneak peek. The actual document is with methodological parts, who will use it, when, how, and the practical templates are organized as ready to be filled or to be transferred into digital tools, and of course adjusted.
So regarding that, Irina, meanwhile, our participants interact or make the questions via chat or raise their hands. Yes, I have a question is, how do you expect that the role allocation tracker is going to change teacher perspective during the first week, for example, of using it? How do you expect it's going to be?
I imagine if some schools volunteer to use this tool with the role allocation, probably they will get 2-3 classes and they will observe that.
Peraí, só. Enquanto você está vendo aí, eu vou aumentar só um pouco, ela está falando uma coisa importante agora. Peraí.
I'm sorry, we have yeah, you can carry on. I just moved the person.
I'm imagining like in the okay, not in the worst case scenario, but we are expecting some results that teaching in a couple of classes with different classes, the teacher may observe that most of the girls prefer to be observers, to record, to step aside, maybe to summarize, and the main ideas could be the most brave ideas and long shot ideas could come from boys. And if they observe and record this couple of times, maybe they will try to change this pattern. For example, the first time the task is just distributed among those 4 students, and the next time the task is distributed to them, but you will be now the presenter, you will be now the recorder, and when shifting roles and with changing the roles during different tasks, the pattern could shift, or the girls could be more confident over time. But in general, this could help them designing more thoroughly these group works.
That's very, very good practical approach, of course. And I wonder also, is there any question from the participants, or may I carry on with my questions? No? And not in the chat? Oh yeah, Catherine Mulligan, thank you very much. You can open the camera, we can see you better.
Sure. Sorry.
Great.
Hi, everybody.
So the floor is yours. The floor is yours, Catherine.
Yeah, lovely to see you. Thank you so much, Irina, for a really very interesting presentation. I've got one question that has struck me many times as I've sort of sat through similar discussions. How do we get past, it seems that we have this set of problems with every generation. So I'm a very old woman now, I've got grey hair, you know, and every time we go through this with digital education, and we seem to go through the same thing every time. And I was wondering, you know, it's really great work. Do you have any thoughts about how to, you know, genuinely transform the way we're educating? It's just a quick question, because it seems to come up every generation.
Well, this is general question. First, thank you for the question. Are your background in teaching?
Yeah, well, I'm a researcher, but I've spent sort of
research.
I've spent 10 years in higher education. I've done extensive teaching in computer science and economics. I'm a fellow of the Higher Education Academy, so that's why I'm asking, because you know we've gone through this a lot. So, and I would love for us to, you know, work out how to actually solve it once and for all. And I think you've got some really good ideas. So it was just a thought. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, in our thematic working group, we had more like a holistic approach, and the Classroom Evidence Lab is only one tool that we finalized during our work. Actually, we have some outputs that could inform your question, and of course, there are some evidence that there are some gaps, some disturbing gaps in ICT education, and also in transition from higher education, from upper secondary education to higher education and to work and towards leadership roles. But we have some additional proposals to be developed further, one of which is preparing some gender lens instruments for continuous professional development for teachers. Not something new. You know that everybody is engaged in this CPD process at schools. So we provided some concepts for continuous professional development in gender inclusion. So we believe that if teachers are more engaged in the process, like to raise their awareness that this is something that they could put emphasis on, they could be more how to say, they could be more aware during classes on what happens during classes. So okay, not in the last years, but with this new generation in classes with the short attention span, teachers should change their roles as not only educators, but also facilitators of knowledge. And not only as observers of students' dynamics in the classroom, but also to shift and to intervene those dynamics in class. So unfortunately, this means more work for teachers. But this is my fast reply on that. How do we change the system? With more work for teachers. Of course, also with engagement of at policy level, with ministries, agencies. I think some gender equality and gender inclusion teaching and awareness events could also be beneficial for them. First at system level, then at the school level, so we need more engagement. And if I can go further, when talking about career guidance that starts from school, maybe we need some further awareness campaigns also for parents and also for students, especially in ICT, because most of the people think that ICT sphere is quite aggressive, men-dominated sphere, and this is mainly coding roles and programming codes. But actually, the labor market spectrum in ICT is quite broader. We have some digital health professions. We have ICT in public sector. So we have many other professions that could be that could combine ICT skills with other skills and could be considered from girls to pursue their careers. But this is an ideal world, I guess.
But Irina, thank you. If there is no other question, I would like also another one. For those schools that already are using the teacher selfie, you heard me to mention that integration in the International Women's Day in Brussels, where you were present and defended.
Yeah.
So if they are already using the teacher selfie to evaluate their digital strategy, how do you see the data from this evidence lab complementing those high-level results? Because for me, the teacher is high level. So this is more evidence based on the classroom. Do you see that and how it can be? Yeah. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Not only the selfie, but Digicom Edu those are two already developed frameworks that are widely used in European Union. They're not something new. So one of our proposal actually under our work in the thematic working group 1 was to develop further gender lens nuances into those frameworks. And when talking about selfie, we mean that, of course, selfie, for those who don't know, is a school reflection tool about digital capacity. It's also anonymous, and it's measured at the school level. So it could be good as a complementary to the classroom evidence lab to create some selfie add-on that simply adds one missing dimension: gender responsiveness in the digital education. And for those who don't know the actual instrument, it's a digital like tool. So I would propose to introduce a small set of indicators and prompts that will allow school to reflect on who feels confident using technology, who takes technical leadership in class, and whether digital policies actually translate into inclusive practice. Again, not a new system, but a gender add-on to already existing and widely used tool. The same is actually, I can say the same with the Digicomp Edu. Some like brief questions on each competence area could be beneficial to add just gender responsive lens that is layered onto this existing framework, onto those each competence areas.
Okay, good. And now that we are moving to implementation and you have this platform, the Women in Digital Forum, what would be your call? Do you need teachers? Do you need a school? Do we need 5 schools to test it like a pilot? Do we need to talk to politicians, to European Commission, to make it from the bottom, to make it from the top? What can we do to see the results and the practical implementation and how it's going to help us, yes?
Yeah, as I said, this is a practically ready framework that in the ideal case could be adopted at system level, at ministry level. There's a guidance that could be adjusted. So ministries could adjust this framework, of course, to translate to their languages and to insist schools or at least some schools at first, some volunteer schools to implement the whole cycle and then maybe revise it. It won't cost anything at all. So if there's a cohort of schools that are collecting, for example, for a year, this light structure classroom evidence, this will move actually the discussion from our positive intention to implementation. So ministries could adjust the tool and to choose maybe some schools to pilot the framework. Teachers should be trained a little bit how to use it to build capacity, and schools could embrace in a daily routines of their work. So maybe some like coordinated actions could be done. But this could be proposed on a ministerial level. I highly doubt that a separate school will volunteer on that without a project to fund it.
Okay, we will see. Well, if there is not more questions, I will say thank you all for your participation, your presence here, and for engaging in this session, it is clear that while the Classroom Evidence Lab is in its early stage, it offers a very well and very real way to turn policy into classroom action. As we move forward toward implementation, we encourage you to think about how these 5 steps could fit in your own schools or regions, your countries. We will send the presentation slides and a link to the tool documentation to your email, or we will be distributed via forum. Irina, thank you very much for your expertise, for your compromise in the thematic working group 1. Thank you all for your participants, for your commitment to ICT education for girls and women, and have a wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.